doing good. Oh, and Pan after made sure she wanted to say hello, and she was gonna try to hang out, but she heard you coming a little later. But she definitely wanted to, send shout outs to you.
And Fred Hampton Jr. I know him, but
Chairman Fred Hampton Jr.
I knew his father back in the days. We were in a study group together in Chicago.
Oh wow!
And in 1967 and 68, maybe a year before he was assassinated. But Fred Hampton Sr. was an extraordinary person, even as a very young man. He was like a political prodigy. And part of the reason I think he was assassinated is because he had the potential to actually change the nature of politics in Chicago by uniting, the street organizations, the Blackstone Rangers and the West Side Disciples, and so on and so forth, into a political force, which eventually happened in the 1980s with the election of Howard Washington as the first black mayor of Chicago. But Fred Hampton is a historic figure. Had he lived, he would have ascended along with Bunchy Carter and John Huggins to be major figures in the Black Panther Party. Would have changed maybe the direction of that organization, and in a lot of ways the direction of the black struggle in the 60s and 70s. So it's always good. I was listening to Chairman Fred. It was very interesting to listen to him speak. And he reminds me in many ways of his dad.
That's what Dead Fred said in the song. It walks just like him, talks just like him. It was a powerful program, but they definitely wanted to make sure that they connected with you at least,
Well, listen, we've been going through a lot of things, and for the next few weeks, I want to focus on Du Bois's treatment of and understanding of black women.
Wow. Okay.
And in these next few weeks, we're going to deal with women, one of whose names is Josie. We'll talk about her today, and another woman named Zora. We'll talk about her next week. Another woman, Sarah Andrews. But these are all figures from his fiction or from his recounting of his own experiences. And even, you take a lot of scholars today, they know nothing of Du Bois's treatment of women.
And he wrote extensively on women.
Oh, yes, he did. Oh, yes.
And people do the same thing with Douglas, right?
Oh, yes. But the other thing, because Du Bois wrote fiction, as I said here before, he wrote 3 novels. And the novel form, the fiction form, was a way to explore social and psychological and historical phenomenon that he couldn't quite do in sociology or historical writings. So let me just start with this. Du Bois went to Fisk University. And, when he talks about his life, he privileges Fisk over Harvard and the University of Berlin, 2 universities that he also went to. It was at Fisk, he said, that he learned to be black. And, I went to a historically black college, and I've gone to historically white colleges. And believe me, there are no comparisons. And you cannot, as they say, recreate the black experience in a white university.
Wow.
Because, these white universities are primarily profit-driven. I find that the black universities, even up to this day, with all of their problems, are driven by a sense of service to the community, to the people. So, Du Bois went to Fisk. He enters Fisk in 1885. He graduates in 1888. But in the summers, the students at Fisk would teach schools to the black farmers and sharecroppers in Tennessee. And Du Bois did that for 2 years. And so let me just read about this woman, Josie. He talks about his school in rural Tennessee. And he begins, "Then there was Josie herself. She seemed to be the center of the family, always busy at service or at home or berry picking, a little nervous and inclined to scold like her mother, yet faithful too like her father. She had about her a certain finesse, the shadow, and I want you to listen to this, the shadow of an unconscious moral heroism that would willingly give all of life to make life broader, deeper, and fuller for her and hers. I saw much of this family afterwards and grew to love them for their honest efforts to be decent and comfortable and for their knowledge of their own ignorance. There was with them no affectation. The mother would scold the father for being so easy. Josie would roundly berate the boys for carelessness, and all knew that it was a hard thing to dig a living out of a rocky side hill. I secured the school. I remember the day I rode horseback out to the commissioner's house with a pleasant young white fellow who wanted the white school. The road ran down the bed of a stream, the sun laughed and the water jingled, and we rode on. "Come in," said the commissioner. "Come in. Have a seat. Yes, that certificate will do. Stay to dinner. What do you want a month?" Oh, thought I, this is lucky. But even then fell the awful shadow of the veil, for they ate first, then I alone. And then he continues, "It was a hot morning late in July when the school opened. I trembled when I heard the patter of little feet down the dusty road and saw the growing row of dark, solemn faces and bright, eager eyes facing me. First came Josie and her brothers and sisters. The longing to know, to be a student in the great school at Nashville, hovered like a star above this child woman amid her work and worry, and she studied doggedly. There was the Dowells from their farm over towards Alexandria, Fanny with her smooth black face and wondering eyes, Martha brown and dull, and the pretty wife girl of a brother and the younger brood." And then Du Bois continues, "I like to stay with the Dowells, for they had 4 rooms and plenty of good country fare. Uncle Bird had a small rough farm, all woods and hills, miles from the big road. But he was full of tales. He preached now and then, and with his children, berries, horses, and wheat, he was happy and prosperous." And then Du Bois ends, "For 2 summers I lived in this little world. It was dull and humdrum. The girls looked at the hill in wistful longing, and the boys fretted and haunted Alexandria, this village not far from where the school was. Alexandria was a town, a straggling, lazy village of houses, churches, and shops, and an aristocracy of Toms and Dicks and captains. Cuddled on the hill to the north was the village of the colored folks, who lived in 3 or 4 room unpainted cottages, some neat and homelike and some dirty. The dwellings were scattered rather aimlessly, but they centered about the twin temples of the hamlet, the Methodist and the Hard Shell Baptist churches. These in turn leaned gingerly on a sad colored schoolhouse. Hither my little world wended its crooked way on Sunday to meet other worlds and gossip and wonder and make the weekly sacrifice with frenzied priests at the altar of the old-time religion. Then the soft melody and mighty cadence of Negro song fluttered and thundered. I have called my tiny community a world, and so its isolation made it, and yet there was among us but a half-awakened common consciousness, sprung from the common joy and grief at burial, birth, or wedding, from a common hardship and poverty, poor land and low wages, and above all, from the sight of the veil that hung between us and opportunity. All this caused us to think some thoughts together, but these, when ripe for speech, were spoken in various languages. Those whose eyes 25 and more years before had seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, the end of slavery, saw in every present hindrance or help a dark fatalism bound to bring all things right in His, God's, own good time. The mass of those to whom slavery was a dim recollection of childhood, found the world a puzzling thing. It asked little of them, and they answered with little, and yet it ridiculed their offering. Such a paradox they could not understand, and therefore sank into listless indifference, or shiftlessness, or reckless bravado. There were, however, some, such as Josie, Jim, and Ben, to whom war and hell and slavery were but childhood tales, whose young appetites had been whetted to an edge by school and story and half-awakened thought. Ill could they be content, born without and beyond the world, and their weak wings beat against their barriers of caste, of youth, of life. At last, in dangerous moments, against everything they opposed, even a whim. And then he talks about when he returns 10 years after he graduated from FIS. He returns to give a valedictory. He would return to FIS periodically in 1898, again in 1908 and 1924, and again finally in 1938, the 50th anniversary of his graduation. But then he returns in 1898, and he goes to the school that he taught at in rural Tennessee, and he says, Josie was dead. And the gray-haired mother said simply, we've had a heap of trouble since you've been away. I had feared for Jim. With a cultured parentage and a social caste to uphold him, he might have made a venturesome merchant or West Point cadet. But here he was, angry with life and reckless. And when Farmer Durham charged him with stealing wheat, the old man had to ride fast to escape the stones which the furious fool hurled after him. They told Jim to run away, but he would not run. And the constable came that afternoon. It grieved Josie, and great awkward John walked 9 miles every day to see his little brother through the bars of Lebanon jail. At last the two came back together in the dark night. The mother cooked supper, and Josie emptied her purse, and the boys stole away. Josie grew thin and silent, yet worked the more. The hill became steep for the quiet old father, and with the boys away, there was little to do in the valley. Josie helped them to sell the old farm, and they moved nearer town. Brother Dennis the carpenter built a new house with 6 rooms. Josie toiled a year in Nashville and brought back $90 to furnish the house and change it into a home. And so he ends. And this story of Josie, in the chapter of the Souls of Black Folk called On the Meaning of Progress, is very important because it is a story of black women throughout our history who strive against all odds to make a way. And this farm, this little plot of land that they acquired after the Civil War and during Reconstruction, but it could never really provide for the family, and it could never provide enough crops to sell. And so they also looked to being educated. You know, Du Bois would say after slavery, black people, there were 3 things that they wanted. They wanted freedom, they wanted land, and finally they wanted education. And so all of that failed them. And so when Du Bois returned to Nashville in 1898, 10 years after his graduation, Josie was dead. And that was his statement, Du Bois' statement on the meaning of progress. And of course, so many black people today here in North Philly or West Philly are Josie's, and he referred to her as a moral hero.
Now, is there any volume that tries to collect these works?
No, you know, not that I know of.
Certain subjects you might focus on, like in a reader?
Sadly not. especially on women.
That's what I mean. That'd be a good dissertation, I guess, because somebody would do themselves well to try to focus on that.
Because, it is both fiction and a scientific, historical type of exploration of the black woman, you know what I'm saying?
And maybe even to connect that with some of the feminist so-called writings of Douglas.
Yeah.
I've never really heard a comparison.
Yeah, I haven't either.
But I've heard they both written fairly extensively on that subject. And I don't know if that's encouraged today.
Well,
like the men don't seem to.
The question is, what is encouraged? What do we want to hear? What do we want to know? And there's, we have what is popular, which is often what I think is trivial. And then we have what is, I think, deeper and what we really do need to know. And I think Du Bois, and I think the studies of women, and as we go along, we're going to look at some other women, and we'll see a different kind of feminism, a different kind of understanding of how black women are so pivotal and interconnected to the struggle of black folk and ultimately of humanity.
We're going to take a quick break, come right back. Year of Du Bois with Dr. Anthony Montero. I am Aaron Smith, the Rapping Professor. She is Queen Kuwait's super producer. Put some respect on her name, and we thank you for waking up with words, y'all.
Creator Roofing. That's the company my dad runs. He's a great roofer and a father too. I've watched my dad over the years. He really cares about his customers like he cares about our family. My dad has been a licensed bonded roofer for over 20 years. He runs Creator Roofing. He's a block captain and he started Streets of Hope, a ministry to feed, clothe, and shelter the homeless. Call my dad because he cares about people at 267-333-1778.
Hi, this is Brandon Wallace, the owner of Creator Roofing. Please give us a call at 267-333-1778.
What does a school bell bring to mind? The day's end? Or the end of school entirely? As in, kids dropping out. At Communities in Schools, we're helping at-risk students whose ability to show up for school is jeopardized by hardships.
They've always had my back. They've always done anything to help me.
Anytime I needed support, they were there.
We work in schools to help kids stay in school.
Communities in Schools never gave up on me. They told me I can do it, and I did it.
See how we help all students succeed at communitiesinschools.org.
It's WURD Founders Day. Join WURD Radio as we celebrate our founder, Walter P. Lomax Jr., MD. Thursday, August 23rd in the Skyline Room of the Central Library, 1901 Vine Street. We'll broadcast live on location from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Doors open at 9. Our on-air day kicks off with a special live solution session led by the Rapping Professor, Dr. Aaron Smith at 9 a.m., followed by the finale of the Summer of Freedom from 10 a.m. till noon, hosted by Steph Burnett. A very special one-on-one interview between WURD President and CEO Sarah Lomax Reese and best-selling author and psychologist Dr. Robin Smith. Then at 4, it's a special Friday edition of Reality Check, hosted by Charles Ellison.
And that's just what's happening on air. Center yourself with chair yoga led by Dr. Robin Alston on the library balcony at 11. Or check out our interactive gallery featuring photos and stories from our Word on Violence initiative. Bring your young people for our annual back-to-school backpack giveaway and bring your tech and be part of our WURD Tech Corner. Don't miss it.
Founders Day is the perfect time to start or renew your 4WURD membership at the special discounted rate of just $80. For more information on WURD Founders Day, visit wordradio.com. You're listening to Wake Up with WURD on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Independent black media, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, WURD, WURDradio.com. Listen live anytime and log on. We are live in studio with Dr. Anthony Montero, the Year of Du Bois. We were just discussing Du Bois and his writings on women and feminism. And I was saying to the listeners last break, there are some issues with the phone lines. We are well aware of that at this point. So if you tried to call in and weren't able to, our sympathies and apologies, and we are working to rectify and remedy the situation as we speak. But the beauty of it is we have books. And I was saying if you want to read some more, for those who might just be tuning in, they might have missed the earlier segment, if there's another piece that you were considering, sharing with the people. Usually I know we take some calls, but today, if you wanted to give some more information or read another piece, that would work out as well. So it's up to you.
Well, I wasn't prepared.
Oh, no, you don't have to. No.
But, yeah.
Or even just talking about relating some of the parts of the pieces you read to what's going on with a lot of women today.
Well, and what's going on with black folk. You know what I'm saying? And the attack upon the family, the attack upon fundamental institutions of black survival and black resistance. And I think that's the thing that, you know, Du Bois is saying in this chapter. It's from the Souls of Black Folk, and it's the 4th chapter entitled of the Meaning of Progress. What is progress, you know? And, of course, what does it mean that we can claim, or some of us claim, all this progress since the civil rights period? That's a narrative that we're inundated with, and we go into our communities, as Du Bois talked about in this chapter, and you see the state of black women. And if black women are not doing well, the black community and black children are not doing well. I think that's the
foundation of the nation.
Absolutely.
So with some of these young girls, how important would it be for the young girls to read some of this? Because a lot of times you see certain people in history, you know, have certain audiences for whatever reason, but I don't know if a lot of young women, even those that are scholars and even some that have PhDs, are as versed in Du Bois' writing as many other scholars. Even the men, they seem to have a better understanding of maybe a Garvey or a Malcolm, but very seldom do I meet sisters who are like, you know, I've really been getting into Du Bois, especially what he says about women. So how do we change that narrative?
Well, the question is, what is being taught anywhere? I mean, I heard you talking about you go to a school or whatever, and you say, have you ever heard of MOVE? And the kids say, no, I never heard of MOVE. And so the question is, what is being taught? And if it is not being taught in the public schools, of course we have to demand it, but I think we're going to have to develop ways and means of public education, something like what we're doing here and what you do regularly, drawing people's attention to various things.
But you're right, in terms of a curriculum, that's a whole other discussion.
So you say, what do young girls know? What do young boys know? What do grown people know? Of course, you know, knowledge is power. Know the truth, and the truth can make you free. So we are faced with a real dilemma at this moment in the history of black folk and of the country.
No, I had a conversation just recently. My daughter's 8, and she was talking about James Earl Ray, and you know the whole issue of Pepper and working with the family, the King family, to bring this case against the government because they didn't think James Earl Ray was, you know, the one that did it. So this whole other story. So even in the times where they do give attention to issues, sometimes there's still some confusion that can arise from the way that they, you know, limit the story. So you got children today not only being taught that Columbus discovered America, but even when they get to Black History Month, they're saying that Dr. King was a dreamer and James Earl Ray killed him. So there's still so much unpacking and so much reteaching that needs to be done if you haven't already tried to guard them against these lies that they should expect to get in the public school system. It's definitely a major job to do. It's a major task for people.
You know, the interesting thing is that the public schools have given up on the majority of students.
Those that are still open, right? Like the Chairman Fred said today in Chicago, 50-plus schools closed.
Absolutely. And we went through our period of closing at least 23 or 25 public schools. I mean, unimaginable. And selling them to developers to become condos.
Wow.
I mean, you know, so the society has given up on educating the majority of black folk, but the majority of poor people, period. We have to accept this. And that's why you have the closing of schools and the building of prisons. And now the privatizing of prisons. And, you know, it's a dilemma. And we as black folk are going to have to collectively decide how we deal with this situation, because it is horrendous. I don't know that we can survive as a people in this country if we are not educated, if we are not, I'll put it this way, ideologically clear. Talk about Fred Hampton. I was mentioning the fact that we were in a study group together in Chicago in the late 60s. Why would Fred Hampton leader of the Black Panther Party, an activist, need to study. Well, how can you lead if you don't know? Mm-hmm. And we were only about 21 at the time. And and of course, in the civil rights movement, and the Black Panthers did this as well. I know I was involved in this in an earlier period here in Philadelphia. We set up freedom schools.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I worked at freedom schools for a long time here in Philadelphia. And I think it was Dr. Carr and others had us out at Alice Haley Farm in Tennessee. And a lot of the people who do a lot of work in the city and other cities, I noticed, come from that tradition, because those people that were in freedom schools, I know they're in Baltimore and they're in Philly, they're in New York, and they're some of the only people I know that have that connection to that history, because it wasn't being taught in anybody's public schools.
Oh yeah, and when you have freedom schools and the fact, or liberation schools, or black liberation,
what they call
schools,
Saturday schools, and even
Saturday
overseas.
free schools, and when you have things like this, you affect people. Knowledge affects people in very profound ways. I mean, because you're not just teaching about the objective world, you're teaching about people's relationships to that world. If I am black and in Philadelphia, and I'm a working person, let us say, and I have children, if I understand not just the world in general, but how I fit into that world and how my history has made and been transformed by that world. I mean, this is what a living education is about. Now, of course, most of us are educated through the mass media, and I put quotes around education, and there is not enough of what Du Bois and his fellow students at Fisk were doing back in the 1800s. In other words, in the summers, going into the poor communities to teach children. And the reason they taught in the summer is because the rest of the year, the children and the family were working to grow the crops. You know what I'm saying? So it was in the summer that they went. We don't have that today. The concept that the educated person is obligated morally to serve. And who do you serve? The poor. That is the key. Why am I being educated if not to serve humanity and black humanity? And that is not a part of the moral education of people. People have big debts. They go to college and they say, well, I'll, borrow money, and when I get out, I'm $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in debt. Now I have to repay the debt. So before I can do anything for anybody else, I have to make money to pay off what it costs me to be educated. It's a vicious cycle.
And I always think about Malcolm as one of the most profound examples of that, the example of the transformative potential of education. You got somebody using drugs, selling drugs, pimping and stealing and doing everything else, and just encountering the information, not even encountering the man, in the person of Elijah Muhammad, but just hearing about the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, having that transformative effect that enabled him to go forth and transform the world. This knowledge is power thing should never be taken lightly. Any last words you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, no, that's all, but let me make an announcement. This Saturday.
I was about to say, don't you do some Saturday schools?
Yeah, but we have something special. Every Saturday we do the Saturday free school, and all your listeners.
Church of the Advocate, right?
Yes, 9:30 to whenever, and everybody's welcome to come. But we're having a special event starting at 2:00 at the Church of the Advocate, and it is a Saturday free school along with the Temple University Students for Justice in Palestine.
Oh, wow.
We're doing an event on Palestine and Black America, the common struggles. So, I'd like to invite everybody to come out
this
to that.
Saturday, 2:00?
Yes, at the Church of the Advocate, Palestine and Black America.
Now, we gave some information today on this show. If you got information, you don't, no tuition charges, you don't got to go into debt and get a bunch of loans, but it would behoove you, be in your best interest, to get some, some support behind the station, like a membership is in order. So we thank Dr. Anthony Montero, Year of W.E.B, always coming through with the information and connecting it in a relevant way to contemporary society and talking about solutions for our current problems. And we have to ask those questions. What is being taught? And what is the appetite of the populace? Like, what do people, crave? And how do we meet them where they are to bring them somewhere higher? These are questions we must continue to ask ourselves, as well as what is the purpose of our education? What are we going to do with our so-called success? Well, you see what I'm doing with mine. I'm waking up early. You play that beat. Play that beat. I like. Oh, we know the beat? The beat, the last beat. And when days of life is going on. That beat.
I'm sorry.
That dance. You said what beat? I said, look at the time. The 9:56 beat.
Now it's me who's distracted today. I apologize.
We're just trying so hard to make sure we can get these listeners back on. We had an issue with the phone lines, and Queen Kwesa is diligent and really focused on making sure that we can stay and, get reconnected with the people. It ain't the same without that connection. I'm lucky we got the online thing in the meantime. Hit us up on Twitter and Facebook at On Word. 23rd of August, y'all. Founders Day celebration, Central Branch of the Free Library. It's going to be something special. We thank all of our guests today. We had Mike Africa, Debbie Africa calling in. We had Pam Africa in studio. We had Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. in studio representing that powerful legacy. Said with the last word out of my mouth, you'll say that I am a revolutionary. So salute to the long-lasting legacy of Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. and have a lovely day. I am Young Face. See, I pause for a minute and let the music speak. See that? Y'all don't see what I'm doing up here. Y'all don't see what I'm doing. Well, Ali say, keep the camera moving because I'm moving kind of fast. Okay. I am Aaron Smith, the Rabbit Professor. She is Queen Kwesa, super producer. Hope we've given you some information and some love. Who's up next?
Rocka Randu.
Rocka Randu.